Hello friend, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I will explain the Steven Spielberg success story and his career started. Let's start.
At age 13, Spielberg made a 40-minute war film, Escape to Nowhere, with a cast of classmates. The film won first prize in a statewide competition. Throughout his early teens, and after entering high school, Spielberg made about 15 to 28mm adventure films. He recalls that my dad told me stories about World War II constantly. I knew, based on the stories my dad and his friends were telling about World War II, that there was no glory in war. And it was ugly, and it was cruel, and it was, visually devastating. And so I thought, someday, if I ever do make a war movie for real, it's got to be something that tells the truth about what those experiences had been for those young 17-, 18-, 19-year-old boys storming Omaha Beach. Let's say. In Phoenix, Spielberg went to the local theater every Saturday. Formative films included Captain's Courageous, 1937, Pinocchio, 1940, The Seven Samurai, 1954, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, 1956, Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, the film that set me on my journey, The Birds, 1963, Dr. Strangelove, 1964, and 2001, A Space Odyssey. I'm still living off the adrenaline that I experienced watching that film for the first time. He attended Arcadia High School in 1961 for 3 years. He wrote and directed his first independent film in 1963, a 140-minute science fiction adventure, Firelight, which later inspired Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The film, funded mainly by his father, had a budget of under $600 and was shown in a local theater for one evening. In the summer of 1964, he worked as an unpaid assistant at Universal Studios' editorial department. His family later moved to Saratoga, California, where he attended Saratoga High School, graduating in 1965. A year later, his parents divorced. Spielberg moved to Los Angeles to stay with his father, while his 3 sisters and mother remained in Saratoga. He was not interested in academics, aspiring only to be a filmmaker. He applied to the University of Southern California's film school, but was turned down because of his mediocre grades. He then applied and enrolled at California State University, Long Beach, where he became a brother of Theta Chi fraternity. After taking a tour bus to Universal Studios, a chance conversation with an executive led to Spielberg getting a 3-day pass to the premises, allowing him to come back the next day. On the 4th day, he walked up to the studio gates without a pass, and the security guard waved him in. I basically spent the next 2 months at Universal Studios, and that was how I became an unofficial apprentice that summer. In 1968, Universal gave Spielberg the opportunity to write and direct a short film for theatrical release, the 26-minute 35mm Amblin. Studio Vice President Sidney Sheinberg was impressed by the film and offered Spielberg a 7-year directing contract. A year later, he dropped out of college to begin directing television productions for Universal. It made him the youngest director to be signed to a long-term plan with a major Hollywood studio. Spielberg returned to Long Beach in 2002, where he presented Schindler's List to complete his Bachelor of Arts in Film and Electronic Media.
Career 1969 to 1974. On the horizon. Spielberg's professional debut was directing segments for the 1969 pilot episode of Night Gallery, scripted by Rod Serling and featuring Joan Crawford. Initially, there was skepticism from Crawford and studio executives regarding Spielberg's inexperience. Despite Spielberg's efforts to implement advanced camera work techniques, studio executives demanded a more straightforward approach. His initial contributions received mixed responses, leading Spielberg to briefly step back from studio work. Joan Crawford, reflecting on her collaboration with Spielberg, recognized his potential, noting his unique intuitive inspiration compared to more seasoned directors. She expressed her appreciation for Spielberg's talent in a note to him and also communicated her approval to Rod Serling, emphasizing Spielberg's promising future in the industry. Crawford's endorsement highlighted Spielberg's early recognition in Hollywood despite initial hesitations regarding his experience. In the early 1970s, Spielberg unsuccessfully tried to raise financing for his own low-budget films. He turned to writing screenplays with other writers and then directing television episodes. These included the series Marcus Welby, MD, The Name of the Game, LA 2017, Columbo, Owen Marshall, Counselor at Law, and The Psychiatrist. Although unsatisfied with this work, Spielberg used the opportunity to experiment with his techniques and learn about filmmaking. He earned good reviews and impressed producers. He was earning a steady income and relocated to Laurel Canyon, Los Angeles. Based on the strength of his work, Universal signed Spielberg to do 4 television films. The first was Duel, 1971, adapted from Richard Matheson's short story of the same name about a salesman, Dennis Weaver, being chased down a highway by a psychotic tanker truck driver. Impressed with the film, executives decided to promote it on television. Reviews were positive, and Universal asked Spielberg to shoot more scenes so that Duel could be released to international markets. Deservedly so, writes David Thompson, for it stands up as one of the medium's most compelling spirals of suspense. More TV films followed: Something Evil, 1972, and Savage, 1973. In 1974, Spielberg made his theatrical debut, The Sugarland Express, based on a true story about a married couple on the run, desperate to regain custody of their baby from foster parents. The film starred Goldie Hawn and William Atherton and marked the first of many collaborations with the composer John Williams. Although the film was awarded Best Screenplay at the 1974 Cannes Film Festival, it was not a commercial success, which Spielberg blamed on Universal's inconsistent marketing. The film opened in 400 theaters in the US to positive reviews. Pauline Kael wrote, "Spielberg uses his gifts in a very free and easy, American way, for humor and for a physical response to action. He could be that rarity among directors, a born entertainer, perhaps a new generation's Howard Hawks." The Hollywood Reporter wrote that a major new director is on the horizon. 1975 to 1980, Magician. Producers Richard D. Zanuck and David Brown took a chance with Spielberg and gave him the opportunity to direct Jaws, 1975, a horror thriller based on Peter Benchley's novel of the same name. In it, a great white shark attacks beachgoers at a summer resort town, prompting police chief Martin Brody, Roy Scheider, to hunt it down with the help of a marine biologist, Richard Dreyfuss, and a veteran shark hunter, Robert Shaw. Jaws was the first movie shot on open ocean, so shooting proved difficult and the mechanical shark malfunctioned. The filming schedule overran by 100 days, and Universal threatened to cancel production. Against expectations, Jaws was a success. It set the domestic box office record, making Spielberg a household name. It won Academy Awards for Best Film Editing, Verna Fields, Best Original Dramatic Score, John Williams, and Best Sound, Robert Hoyt, Roger Heeman, Earl Madeira, and John Carter. Spielberg said the malfunctioning of the mechanical shark resulted in a better movie, as he had to find other ways to suggest the shark's presence. After seeing the unconventional camera techniques of Jaws, Alfred Hitchcock praised young Spielberg for thinking outside the visual dynamics of the theater. "He's the first one of us who doesn't see the proscenium arch." After the success of Jaws, Spielberg declined an offer to make Jaws 2. He and Richard Dreyfuss reconvened to work on a film about UFOs, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977. During filming, Spielberg used 65mm film for the best picture quality and a new live-action recording system so that the recordings could be duplicated later. He cast one of his favorite directors, François Truffaut, as the scientist Claude Lacombe, and worked with special effects expert Douglas Trumbull. One of the rare films both written and directed by Spielberg, Close Encounters was very popular with filmgoers, and he received his first Best Director nomination from the Academy Awards. It earned 6 more nominations, winning Best Cinematography, Vilmos Zsigmond, and Best Sound Effects Editing, Frank Warner. Stanley Kaufman wrote, "I saw Close Encounters at its first public showing in New York, and most of the audience stayed on and on to watch the credits crawl lengthily at the end. For one thing, under the credits the giant spaceship was returning to the stars. For another, they just didn't want to leave this picture. For still another, they seemed to understand the importance of those many names to what they had just seen." Kaufman placed it first on his list of the best American films from 1968 to 1977. Reviewing Close Encounters, Pauline Kael called Spielberg a magician in the age of movies. Spielberg's first film as an executive producer was the directorial debut of Robert Zemeckis' I Wanna Hold Your Hand, 1978. His next directorial work was 1941-1979, an action comedy written by Zemeckis and Bob Gale about Californians preparing for a Japanese invasion after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Spielberg was self-conscious about doing comedy as he had no prior experience in the genre. Universal and Columbia agreed to co-finance the film. 1941 grossed over $92.4 million worldwide upon release, but most critics and the studio heads disliked it. 93 Charles Champlin described 1941 as the most conspicuous waste since the last major oil spill, which it somewhat resembles. Stanley Kubrick supposedly said that the film was great, but not funny. If you like the video, then subscribe my YouTube channel for more update.